All right, let's dive in. Today we're looking at upgrading a Proxmox server from those old HDDs to super fast SSDs.
Yeah, it's a really common upgrade.
It is.
And we've got some great resources here that are going to walk us through all those
Oh,
steps,
absolutely.
backups, restorations.
I mean, the backups are
Yeah.
kind of the scary part, right?
Yeah, you don't want to lose anything
No, you really don't.
when you're doing a hardware upgrade like this.
Absolutely. And that's,
Got to be careful.
data is gold.
Yes, data is gold.
So what's in it for someone who wants to do this upgrade besides just, getting rid of their old drives? What are the two big things that they're going to get out of this?
Well, first of all, you're going to make sure that your server data is kept safe
Right.
in this transition.
Because you are changing a major piece of hardware.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, okay.
And the second thing is you're going to get that performance boost from the SSDs.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to make your virtual machines and your containers run so much faster.
It's a night and day difference.
It's-
Yeah, between SSD and a spinning drive.
It is.
Absolutely. So, we should definitely talk about the backups and all the different methods that are covered here because we've got quite a few.
We do.
Yeah, we've got using Proxmox's own tools.
Yes.
We've got a manual system configuration backup using rsync.
Yeah.
There's a whole Proxmox Backup Server.
That's right.
And then even cloning the disk with Clonezilla.
That's right, if you want to go the whole hog.
Yeah, but going back to the backups, because I think that is something that, we should really stress the importance of.
Yes.
Because sometimes people just kind of think, oh, yeah, I'll back it up or,
Yeah, it'll be fine.
yeah, it'll be fine. But, really, it's like peace of mind.
It's peace of mind.
And also disaster recovery.
Yes.
So have you seen any situations where, backups really save the day?
Oh, all the time.
Really?
All the time. I've seen accidental deletions.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen server rashes. And one that really sticks out is a server that was hit by ransomware.
Oh, wow.
They had their entire data store encrypted, but because they had off-site backups,
Oh, nice.
they were able to restore everything.
That's huge.
And they didn't have to pay the ransom.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, because that is definitely a consideration these days, right?
It is.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's talk about some of these methods. So Proxmox itself has backup tools built in.
It does.
Okay. And what do we need to know about those?
Well, first of all, you need to configure the location where your backups are going to go.
Okay. And why is that important?
Well, you need to choose a separate storage location.
Okay.
You don't want to be backing up to the same drive that you're upgrading.
Got it.
So this could be an external hard drive,
Okay.
a NAS device,
Okay.
or even cloud storage.
Got it. Yeah. No, that makes sense because if that drive goes bad, you've lost everything.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
You've lost your data and the backup.
All right. So once we've got that location set up, what's the process like for backing things up?
Well, you can schedule backups.
Oh, okay.
So they happen automatically.
Okay.
Or you can do manual backups whenever you want.
All right. So it gives you some choices.
It does.
Okay.
And you can choose to back up your entire system or just individual VMs and containers.
Okay. All right. So it gives you a lot of granularity.
It does.
Okay, cool. You had mentioned network attached storage or NAS.
Yes.
For someone who doesn't really know what that is, can you kind of break that down a little bit?
Sure. A NAS is basically a mini server
Okay.
that's dedicated to storing and managing files.
All right.
It connects to your network,
Okay.
so you can access it from multiple devices,
Got it.
and you can use it for backups and for file sharing.
Okay, so what's the advantage of using that over, say, an external drive?
Well, with a NAS, you have accessibility from multiple devices.
Right.
And you can also set up RAID.
RAID. Yeah, that's another one that throws people off sometimes.
RAID stands for Redundant Array of Independent Disks.
Okay.
And it's a way to use multiple hard drives
Okay.
to either increase performance or provide data redundancy.
Okay.
For backups, we're usually interested in redundancy.
Okay, so that's where if one drive fails, the other one has got your back?
That's right. It's like having a backup of your backup.
Okay, so it's kind of like a double layer of protection.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, and then you can also do offsite backups with that.
You can.
So that if something, catastrophic happens, you're still protected.
That's right.
Okay, so it's like a good, like a fire or something like that.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So a lot more options with the NAS than just a simple external drive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely more advanced.
Okay, cool. So, all right, so we've got the Proxmox backup tools built in.
Yes.
The sources also mention manual system configuration backups using rsync.
Yeah.
And that's more for backing up the configuration files themselves.
That's right. Things like your network settings, your user accounts, all that sort of stuff.
Okay, so that's not necessarily like the virtual machines themselves or the data within
No,
them.
that's separate.
Okay, got it. So this is just for the configuration of Proxmox.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. And that's where the rsync command comes in.
That's right.
What can you tell us about FairSync? Because that one sounds a little more technical.
Well, rsync is a really powerful tool for copying files,
Okay.
and it can be used to back up your entire etc. directory.
Which is where the configuration files live.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's really efficient because it only copies the files that have changed.
Oh, okay. So it's not like copying the entire thing every time.
No, it's much faster.
Okay.
And you can also use rsync to send your backups to a remote server.
Oh, okay. So that's getting into offsite backups again.
Exactly.
Okay. Got it. So is rsync hard to use?
It can be a little bit daunting at first if you're not familiar with the command line,
Right.
but the basic commands are pretty simple,
Okay.
and there's lots of documentation available online.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's good to know because sometimes those command line tools can be a little scary for people.
It can be.
Yeah. All right, so sync definitely an option. And then also, for people who really want to go all out,
Yes,
there is Proxmox Backup Server
that's right.
or PBS.
PBS.
And that's a whole separate thing, right?
It is.
Okay, and it seems like it was built specifically for Proxmox.
It was.
Okay.
It's designed to work seamlessly with Proxmox environments.
Okay, and one of the things that I noticed about PBS is that it does incremental backup.
Yes, that's a really important feature.
Okay, so what's the difference between a full backup and an incremental backup?
Well, full backup copies everything every time.
Okay.
An incremental backup only copies the changes that have been made since the last backup.
Oh, okay, so that makes sense. So that would save a lot of space and time,
It does,
especially if you're dealing with a very large server.
especially for large servers.
Okay, cool. So what's the overhead like for running PBS? Is it a resource hog?
Not at all.
Okay.
It's actually pretty lightweight.
Okay.
You can run it on a separate machine
Okay.
or even virtualize it within your existing Proxmox environment.
Oh, okay, that's pretty cool.
So it's very flexible.
Okay. And then of course you got to have the storage space for the backups themselves.
Of course.
Okay. But it's not like it's going to bog down your main Proxmox server.
No, not at all.
Okay, cool. And I guess in addition to the incremental backups, are there any other features of PBS that are worth mentioning?
Yes, it also offers encryption and deduplication.
Okay.
So it's very
Sure.
secure and
Okay.
efficient.
Okay, cool.
So it's a really good option for people who are serious about their backups.
Got it. Okay. And then we also have Clonezilla,
Yes,
which is, I guess, kind of the other end of the
I
spectrum.
think it's the nuclear option.
Yeah, you're just copying the whole disk bit for bit.
That's right.
Okay, so when would you want to use Clonezilla as opposed to any of these other methods?
Well, Clonezilla is really good for when you need a quick and exact replica of your source drive. So if you have a fairly simple setup
Oh, okay.
and you just want to copy everything over to a new drive,
Got it.
Clonezilla is a good option.
Okay, so are there any downsides to using Clonezilla?
Well, it's not as flexible as file-based backups.
Okay.
You can't choose to restore individual VMs or container.
Okay.
It's all or nothing.
Got it.
And it also has some limitations with ZFS file systems.
Ah, okay. So if you're using ZFS, maybe not the best choice.
Probably not.
Okay. All right, so we've talked about backing everything up.
Yes.
Let's talk about getting everything back on that new SSD.
Right.
So what's the first step in the restoration process?
The first step is to install a fresh copy of Proxmox VE on your new SSD.
Okay, so we're not even touching the backups yet.
Right.
We're just getting Proxmox installed on that new drive.
That's right.
Okay, and then once that's done, then we can start pulling in all the backups.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do we restore the system configuration?
Well, you can use rsync again.
Oh,
Remember, rsync can be used to copy files in both directions.
got it. So we can pull them from our backup location onto that new SSD.
That's right.
Okay.
You can use it to transfer your configuration files from your backup location to the etc. directory on your new Proxmox server.
Okay, all right. So rsync is coming in handy again.
It is a versatile tool.
Yeah. Okay, and then what about the virtual machines and containers themselves? How do we get those back?
Well, if you used Proxmox built-in backup tools, or PBS,
Okay.
you can connect your backup storage to the new Proxmox server.
Okay.
And the web interface will give you options to restore your VMs and containers.
All right, so that's pretty straightforward.
It is.
Okay. But what if someone's, using the command line or they need a little more control over the restoration process?
Well, Proxmox also provides command line tools for restoring VMs and containers.
Okay, so what are those called?
For VMs, it's QAM restore.
QAM restore.
And for containers, it's core amide restore.
Core amide restore. Okay, so a lot of people are comfortable with the GU, but there are times where the command line is just more powerful. It gives you more options.
And it also gives you the ability to script the restoration process, which can be really useful if you have a lot of VMs or containers to restore.
Right, especially if you want to automate it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we've got all this stuff set up. One thing that the sources mentioned quite a bit was the importance of documentation.
Yes.
And even documenting things before you actually do the upgrade.
That's right.
Why is that so important?
Well, it's really important to document all of your network settings,
Okay.
your cluster configuration,
Okay.
and any other important details about your Proxmox server.
So we're talking IP addresses,
Yes.
host names, DNS servers.
All of that.
Okay.
Because if you don't have that information, you're going to have a really hard time getting your server back up and running on the new SSD.
Right. Yeah. It's like having a blueprint for your server.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And then, of course, store that documentation somewhere safe.
Yes, separate from your server.
Right.
Just like your backups.
Absolutely. Okay. And then another thing that was stressed was testing your backups.
Yes, very important.
So before we actually swap the drives,
Before you swap the drives.
you're saying we should make sure that those backups are good.
Absolutely.
Okay. And how do we do that?
Well, Proxmox has a built-in feature for verifying backups.
Okay.
You can also just try restoring a VM or container from your backup
Okay.
to a test location,
Got it. Just to make sure that it actually works.
just to make sure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Anything else we need to keep in mind before we actually physically swap out the drives?
Well, one more thing is that you need to think about SSD optimization.
Oh, okay. So what does that entail?
Well, SSDs work a little differently than hard drives,
Okay.
and there are a few things you can do to make sure they're performing at their best.
Okay, so like what kind of things are we talking about?
One of the most important things is to enable the trim command.
Trim them. Okay, I've heard of that, but I don't really know what it does.
Trim basically tells the SSD which blocks of data are no longer in use,
Okay.
so it can erase them and make them available for writing.
Okay.
This helps to improve the performance and lifespan of the SSD.
Got it. So it's kind of like keeping the SSD clean and tidy.
Exactly.
Neat. Okay.
And you can enable trim in Proxmox using a command line tool.
Okay, so just a quick command and we're good to go.
That's right.
All right, so we've talked about backups, we've talked about restoring,
Yes.
we've talked about documentation, testing, and even optimizing the SSD.
That's right.
I feel like we've covered a lot.
We have.
But there are actually a couple more things I want to talk about.
Okay.
We've talked about all these sort of traditional methods
Yes.
of backing things up and
Some
restoring.
standard ways.
Yeah, but there are a couple of other options
There are.
that might be more suitable in certain situations.
Right.
And those are using rsync for direct data transfer
Yes.
and ZFS replication.
Yes.
And those are things that we'll get into a little bit later.
In the next part of our deep dive.
But I think those are worth exploring because they can be really powerful tools.
They can.
So we've got a lot more to cover.
We do.
But for now, I think we're going to take a break, and we'll be back soon with part 2 of this deep dive into Proxmox server upgrades.
Looking forward to it.
All right, see you soon.
See you then.
Welcome back to our deep dive on upgrading your Proxmox server.
All right, so we've talked about a bunch of ways to back up and restore.
Yeah, all the traditional methods.
But you mentioned a couple of alternative ways to do things.
Right, like when you really want to get into it.
Yeah, so what are those?
Okay, so one is using rsync for direct data transfer.
Okay, so we talked about rsync for like config files.
Right, but it can do way more than that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it can actually transfer like your entire VM disks.
Whoa. Okay, so like the whole data store?
Pretty much, yeah.
And what's the advantage of that?
Well, it can really minimize downtime.
Okay.
You can start it while the server's still running, and
Okay.
it'll copy stuff over in the background.
Got it.
And then when you're ready to switch,
Yeah.
you've only got to copy over like the recent changes.
Oh, so that's huge if you can't have any downtime.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Any downsides to that approach?
Well, it copies everything,
Okay.
even if it hasn't changed.
Right, so it's not as like targeted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Might not be the best for smaller servers
Got
if your data doesn't change much.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah?
You also mentioned ZFS replication.
Oh, yeah, that one's cool.
Okay, so when would you use that?
That's if you're running Proxmox on top of ZFS.
Okay, so like with TrueNAS or something.
Exactly. Or if you have ZFS directly on Proxmox.
Got it. So not everybody's using ZFS.
Right.
Okay, so this is kind of specific to that.
Yeah, but it's super efficient if you are.
Okay, and how does it actually work?
Well, it uses the ZFS file system itself to copy data between ZFS pools.
And ZFS has a lot of cool features, right?
Oh, yeah, tons.
Like what?
Well, checksumming.
Okay.
Self-healing.
Oh.
Snapshots. Okay, snapshots. I've heard of those.
Yeah, they're like pictures of your data.
Got it.
At a certain point in time.
Okay.
And they don't take up much space.
Okay.
Because they only store the changes.
And the replication keeps those snapshots.
Yeah, it's great for recovery.
Okay, so if something goes wrong, you can roll back to a snapshot.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's like a safety net.
It is.
Got it. Okay, so we've talked about all these methods.
Yeah, quite a few.
Proxmox tools, rsync, PBS, Clonezilla.
Even those alternative ways.
Yeah, so much to choose from.
It depends on your needs, really,
Right.
and your comfort level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Anything else we should touch on before I move on?
Well, just to reiterate, documentation is key.
Okay, we talked about that.
Got to write down all those settings.
Right, like IP addresses and all that.
Everything.
Okay.
And keep it somewhere safe.
Got it.
And also test those backups.
Oh, yeah. That's important.
Super important.
Don't just assume they're going to work.
Nope. Got to test them.
Okay, so we've documented everything. We've tested our backups.
We're almost ready.
Anything else before we swap those drives?
Yeah, don't forget about SSD optimization.
Oh, yeah, we talked about trim.
Right? Got to enable that.
Okay, so that's all taken care of. So I think we've pretty much covered everything.
We've covered a lot.
But there's always more to learn, right?
Oh, definitely.
So where can people go to learn more?
Well, the Proxmox website's a great place to start.
Okay.
They have awesome documentation.
Okay.
And their forum is super helpful.
Right.
And, of course, there's tons of stuff online.
Yeah, videos, tutorials.
All sorts of resources.
Got it. And what about hands-on experience?
Oh, that's the best way to learn.
Yeah.
Set up a test environment.
Okay.
Play around with different methods.
Got it.
Break things, fix things.
Yeah. No, that's how you really learn.
It is.
All right. So as we wrap up this part, what are your final thoughts for our listeners?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to be prepared.
Okay.
Don't rush into this.
Right.
Take your time, understand the process, choose the right method,
Yeah.
document everything,
Absolutely.
test your backups,
Super important.
and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Right. The community is there for you.
Exactly.
Okay. So it might seem daunting at first,
It can be.
but with a little planning and patience,
Mhm.
you can upgrade to an SSD and enjoy all that speed.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, we've got one more part coming up
We do.
where we'll cover some additional considerations.
Looking forward to it.
So stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive on Proxmox server upgrades from HDD to SSD.
We've covered so much ground already.
I know we've talked about backups, restoration, those alternative methods, even optimization.
Right. And all sorts of tools and considerations.
But I think now's a good time to address some common questions people have.
Absolutely. Let's dive into those FAQs.
Okay, first up, what happens to the old hard drive?
Ah, the old spinning rust. Well, you have options.
Like what? Just toss it in the drawer.
You could, but it still has some life left.
Really?
Yeah, you can repurpose it for other storage needs.
Okay, like what?
Maybe backups, media files, archives.
So it becomes like a secondary drive.
Exactly. Take some pressure off that new SSD.
Makes sense.
Or wipe it clean and use it as a dedicated backup drive.
Oh, okay. So like an offline backup.
Yep. Even more redundancy.
Smart.
And if you're super cautious, just disconnect it and store it safely.
Like a cold archive.
Exactly.
Cool. So the old drive doesn't go to waste.
Nope. Plenty of uses.
Now what about networking? Do we need to reconfigure everything after the upgrade?
This is where that documentation we stressed comes in handy.
Oh, yeah. All those IP addresses and settings.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Having that info makes reconfiguring a breeze.
So we just match it to the new setup.
Precisely. Smooth transition.
Got it. Network settings are key.
Absolutely.
Speaking of smooth, we talked about SSDs being fast, but can we do even more for performance?
Always room for optimization, right?
Right. Besides trim, what else can we do?
First, make sure you have enough RAM.
RAM. Okay, how much is enough?
It depends on your workload, but RAM is crucial for virtualization.
Makes sense. More RAM means smoother VMs and containers.
Exactly. Think of it as fuel for those virtual machines.
Got it.
Also, consider a dedicated network card for Proxmox.
A separate one? Why is that?
If you're doing network-intensive stuff, it really helps.
Okay, so it frees up resources on the motherboard.
Like a dedicated lane for data traffic.
Nice analogy.
And lastly, keep Proxmox updated.
Oh, updates, yeah, always important.
They come with performance boosts, bug fixes, security patches.
So it's not just hardware, software matters too.
Absolutely.
Okay, final question. Do we have to repeat this whole process for every hardware upgrade?
Thankfully, no, once you've done it
You
once.
got the hang of it.
Exactly. The principles stay the same.
Backups, documentation, testing.
All those fundamentals.
So it's like learning to ride a bike.
You got it. Different terrain, but same skills.
Awesome, that's reassuring. So as we wrap up this deep dive, any final words of wisdom?
Remember, backups are your lifeline. Don't skimp on them. Document everything meticulously. It'll save you headaches later. And test those backups.
Great advice. And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Absolutely. The Proxmox community is awesome.
Okay, folks, that's it for our Proxmox server upgrade deep dive. We hope you learned a lot and feel empowered to tackle this upgrade yourself.
And remember, with the right planning, patience, and maybe a little bit of courage, you can successfully upgrade to an SSD and unlock that awesome performance.
Happy upgrading, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring the world of technology.